The night air was thick with anticipation as my friends and I set up our campsite deep in the heart of the dense, towering woods. We had been planning this camping trip for months, eager to escape the stress of our everyday lives and embrace the tranquility of nature. Little did we know that our journey into the wilderness would become a nightmare we could never escape. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting eerie shadows among the trees. Our campfire crackled and danced, sending flickering light into the darkness. We sat around it, sharing stories and laughter, unaware of the horrors that awaited us. As the night grew darker, an unsettling feeling settled over the group. The woods seemed to come alive with strange sounds, rustling leaves, distant howls, and whispers that seemed to be carried on the wind. We tried to brush it off as our overactive imaginations, but the unease in our hearts only grew. I decided to take a walk to clear my mind. The moonlight filtered through the dense canopy of trees, creating an otherworldly glow. The silence was deafening, and the only sound was the crunch of leaves beneath my boots. I walked deeper into the woods, feeling an inexplicable pull, as if something were drawing me in. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a dilapidated cabin hidden in the shadows. It was old and weathered, its windows broken and doors barely hanging on their hinges. The sight sent shivers down my spine, but curiosity got the better of me, and I entered the forsaken structure. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of decay. Cobwebs clung to the walls, and the floorboards creaked with each step. As I explored further, I discovered an old journal on a dusty table. Its pages were yellowed with age, and its entries spoke of a curse that plagued these woods. According to the journal, a group of campers had ventured into these woods years ago and never returned. They had stumbled upon the same cabin and, like me, felt an inexplicable urge to explore it. But when night fell, they were tormented by nightmares so vivid and terrifying that they lost their sanity. The journal's final entry was written in shaky handwriting, describing a malevolent presence that haunted the cabin. I rushed out of the cabin, my heart pounding with fear. I had to warn my friends, but as I made my way back to the campsite, the woods seemed different. The trees twisted and contorted, their branches forming grotesque shapes that loomed over me like sinister specters. I called out to my friends, but my voice seemed to be swallowed by the darkness. When I finally reached the campsite, it was empty. The campfire had gone out, and our tents were torn and shredded. Panic welled up inside me as I realized I was alone in this cursed forest. I tried to retrace my steps, to find some sign of my friends, but the woods had become a maze, shifting and changing around me. As the hours passed, I became increasingly disoriented. Whispers echoed through the trees, and I caught glimpses of shadowy figures moving just beyond my vision. The journal's warning echoed in my mind, and I knew I was being hunted by the malevolent presence that lurked in these woods. Exhausted and terrified, I stumbled upon a clearing, and there, at its center, I saw my friends. They were standing perfectly still, their eyes vacant and hollow, as if they were trapped in a waking nightmare. I called out to them, but they didn't respond. I approached them slowly, my heart pounding, and as I reached out to touch one of them, they turned to me with twisted, malevolent grins. Their eyes were filled with a darkness that sent a chill down my spine. I fled from the clearing, tears streaming down my face, knowing that my friends were lost to whatever malevolent force had taken hold of this accursed place. The woods seemed to close in around me, and I could feel the presence drawing closer, its icy grip tightening on my soul. I stumbled through the night, haunted by the whispers and the shadows that pursued me. I don't know how long I wandered, but eventually, I emerged from the woods, battered and broken, but alive. I never spoke of that night again, for fear that the curse that had claimed my friends might still be lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next victim. And so, the horrors of that camping trip remained locked away in the depths of my mind, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the most serene of places. The crackling of the campfire was the only sound that broke the eerie silence of the forest. My friends and I had ventured deep into the woods for a weekend of camping, seeking an escape from the hustle and bustle of city life. Little did we know that this trip would become a nightmare that would haunt our dreams for years to come. The forest had an unsettling aura about it from the moment we arrived. The trees stood tall and menacing, their branches forming a dense canopy overhead that blocked out the moonlight. The air was thick with a pungent, earthy smell that seemed to seep into our very souls, but we were determined to have a good time, so we brushed off our unease and set up our campsite near a small, murky lake. As night fell, we gathered around the campfire, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. The fire's warm glow offered some comfort, but the darkness beyond its reach seemed to grow more oppressive by the minute. It was then that we heard it, a faint, distant whisper that sent shivers down our spines. Did anyone else hear that? I asked, my voice quivering. My friends exchanged nervous glances, but dismissed it as a trick of the wind. We continued our festivities, trying to drown out the creeping unease that had settled over us. Hours passed, and as the fire dwindled, so did our laughter. We couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent us into a state of heightened alert. It was as though the forest itself was closing in on us. Eventually, exhaustion overcame our fear, and we retreated to our tents. I zipped up my sleeping bag, hoping to find solace in the embrace of sleep. But as I lay there, the forest outside seemed to come alive with sinister intent. I heard the whisper again. Closer this time, it was a soft, haunting voice that seemed to emanate from the very trees themselves. It spoke words that I couldn't quite make out, but their meaning was clear. Something in the woods was calling to us, beckoning us deeper into its clutches. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I woke my friends, their faces pale with fear, and told them what I had heard. They listened in silence, and then one of them, Lisa, spoke up. "We should leave," she said, her voice trembling. "This place isn't right." The rest of us agreed, and we quickly packed up our campsite. But as we made our way through the dark forest, the whispering grew louder, more insistent. It was as though the trees themselves were trying to keep us there, to claim us as their own. Panic set in as we realized that we were hopelessly lost. The path we had followed and had vanished, and the forest had become an impenetrable maze of trees and shadows. The whispering continued, now a cacophony of voices that echoed through the night. Desperation drove us forward, and we stumbled blindly through the darkness, our flashlights casting feeble beams that did little to dispel the gloom. It felt as though the forest was closing in around us, its branches reaching out to ensnare us in its grasp. And then, I saw it, a figure, tall and gaunt, standing amidst the trees. Its eyes gleamed with a malevolent light, and its lips moved, uttering words that chilled me to my core. It was the source of the whispering, the thing that had lured us into this nightmare. Without thinking, we turned and fled in the opposite direction, crashing through the underbrush, our hearts pounding in our chests. But the forest seemed to shift and change, its very geography warping to keep us trapped within its grasp. Hours passed, or maybe it was days. I couldn't tell. We were exhausted, our bodies battered and bruised from our frantic flight. The whispering had become a constant presence, a tormenting voice that never ceased its siren call. And then, just when we thought we couldn't go on, we stumbled upon a clearing. In the center of the clearing was a circle of stones, ancient and weathered. It was a place of power, and as we stepped inside, the whispering ceased, replaced by a profound stillness. We huddled together, seeking refuge within the circle, and waited. The night stretched on, and the forest remained silent. It was as though the ancient stones held sway over the malevolent force that had pursued us. At last, as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, we ventured out of the circle. The forest had returned to its normal, if foreboding, state. We followed the rising sun and eventually found our way back to civilization. To this day, none of us can explain what happened in that forest. We don't speak of it, not to each other or anyone else, but the memory of the whispering voices, the sinister figure, and the oppressive darkness will haunt us for the rest of our lives. We learned a hard lesson that weekend, that some places in this world are best left untouched, that there are forces beyond our understanding, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the unsuspecting to wander too close, and once they have you in their sights, There may be no escape, no way to outrun the horrors that await in the heart of the forest.